but he came up behind a fast horse and he came up pretty well with him. And I just got off Willie and I said, this has got loads of pace. This is a fair tool. And Willie said, yeah, he's been catching my eye and throwing enough at the wall and hope some of it sticks. Now we've got plenty of others following up in behind him. So, and I think sober's a big price in the turners.
We're going to rename the podcast the Sober Podcast if we get this horse home.
Isn't that what we're all going to be next week anyway?
Exactly, David. Exactly. Hello and welcome back to our latest edition of Inside Track Ireland, our brand new racing podcast brought to you by William Hill, the best value bookmaker out there. And it is the week before Christmas, when all was calm and all the last pieces of work were happening, and there's a few flies starting to drop. In the company of Barry Geraghty, we're going to talk about all things Cheltenham next week. We're going to bring on David Casey, one of the busiest men in racing at this time of year. Of course, the assistant trainer to Willie Mullins, to talk about their squad and a little bit about his life as well. Barry, this week we got news that we'll have no Marine Nationale versus Majborough in the Champion Chase. Barry Connell's horse sadly not making the trip. The Reverend, as we find out a little bit later on our chat with David Casey, won't be travelling either. This is a very pensive time of the year for a lot of connections.
Absolutely. No, it is a difficult week and real disappointment for Marine Nationale, for everyone involved. You know, it was bringing up a potential big clash with Majborough, so disappointing for connections there and everyone who got a fancy in him. But that's how it goes with the territory. You know, you'll just have horses having small niggles. He's just medication that won't have cleared in time, so it's little tiny things that you'd never guess.
Yeah, things that we don't bear to think about. The final pieces of work, the final schooling sessions, they're all happening in and around now. We know that there's been work after racing at Leopardstown. We've heard a few horses that are maybe finalising their plans. We know at this stage that there's 9 horses left in the champion hurdle as we speak, as Tutti Quanti has been supplemented for the race, but we still await decisions on the likes of a Lossiemouth and the novices from Willie Mullins' yard. At what stage do you think we're going to get news about horses like that?
Well, usually Willie, it's about 1 minute 2:10 on declaration morning.
And then we don't have the declarations for the jockeys then for another 2 hours. That drives us all mad.
Yeah, so Willie, it'll be lastminute.com. So unless you get news from other sources, other yards, so you won't get much from Closutton until the deadline.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, I know we've a lot of ground to cover. So I think it's time we bring in the man himself. We really appreciate you giving us the time, David. We know this is a very hectic week. Of all of the weeks, it's nearly Christmas. And I know we'll kick on into the Cheltenham preview, the key horses from Closutton. But I wanted to start by asking you, I know you're more made to be a jockey than a basketball player, but was it always going to be a life in horses? Take us back to the beginning.
Would you believe, actually, Jen, I played basketball in school?
Everybody can play. It doesn't mean you're any good.
I won a county final in school for basketball, actually. I think I was only brought on for moral support, maybe. No, you used to put me on a lad's shoulders. But yeah, I did play basketball. No, actually, would you believe horse racing was very small in my life? It was kind of watch the racing on a Saturday with my father and my grandfather and a couple of bets or whatever. But I ended up in the apprentice school for a bet in school with a guy because I was small and light. I was knee high to a grasshopper, and career guidance one day, and the teachers asked him what you want to do, and they're all saying they want to be doctors, accountants and whatever, and he egged me on to say that I want to be a jockey. And he called me up at the end of the class and asked me, was I serious or joking? And I said I was pretty serious because I didn't want to get in trouble, and he handed me a form for the apprentice school. So I said I'd go because I thought it would be kind of just a year out of school, and I said I'd go back to school after a year. And my mate said, no, sure, I bet you won't go. And that was 30 odd years ago.
Drink sense.
No. Perjury, that's what I'm going to say it was for. But anyway.
Well, if you're being honest, and I know you say it was a bet and it was a lot of outside influences, was it ever going to be anything else? Was it ever going to be a doctor? Was it ever going to be a teacher?
No, I was going to be, ideally I would have liked to be a fighter pilot, but I wasn't intelligent enough. So I was going to be an accountant. That was the route I was going down.
Honestly, David, fighter pilot and accountant, not the same personality. You can't be both.
Yeah, when I look back now, I think I would have been pretty bored as an accountant, but I enjoyed figure, so that was going to be it. But I just wasn't intelligent enough to be a fighter pilot. I wanted the thrill, obviously, but
Okay. Well, you were a thrill seeker and you ended up sharing a lot of those thrills and spills with Barry. Barry, you must have a story or two for us because, you know, David was quite good.
Barry, keep quiet there, will you, please?
David was very good. Tactically brilliant. You know, great judge of pace. You knew if David was within reach, you were in the right kind of position. So brilliant rider. Great socially. Good man for a night out. Yeah, and wasn't afraid to push it into the small hours. So no, we had plenty of good nights, good fun, but good crack in the racetrack too. Great rider. Used to get a good tune out of Rule Supreme, who wasn't the most straightforward. I managed to fall off him at the last in the Hennessy, going to be second one year, but David you managed to stay on him most days, David.
Yeah, I got a couple of falls as well, I think, but yeah, he was awkward, but yeah, I just from riding him at home and stuff, I just got to know him kind of well. So yeah, a couple of good days in him.
I've got zero dish out of either of you. Like not a story that I couldn't read in a form book. Come on, David, give me one for Barry. There must be one or two where you just
No.
it sticks in the memory.
It's all for the book, Jane, and I'd have to be dead before it's released.
He's published his book. When is your coming out?
No,
Okay.
I'd have to be dead before mine's released.
I always associate you with, well, there's a few horses, but Kempes, that was, I know you were obviously, Ruby was the linchpin, but you were like the Shamey Heffernan, you know, you were the solid one. You had some big days, and like, let's talk about on his own as well. Should have got that in the steward's room. Like, there was some big days.
Yeah, some great days, obviously, and sure, listen, I was lucky, obviously, of riding for Willie, and I used to ride a good few JPs as well before Barry. I just got on some good horses, and a lot of it just fell into place for me, you know. So it was good, yeah.
How long have you been with Willie, David? How many years?
Sure, I started in Willie's in '94. So obviously, when I was obviously riding at that time, and well, I wasn't at the time when I started. But Willie started me going, and then I done a year in England, and I came back, and obviously not full time. I was kind of 3 days a week, obviously riding work at the time, and when I retired, then I'm retired now. 11 years, I think it's this year. So, and I've been full time, obviously back again full time for 11 years. So, all told, 32, I think now years in and out of the place.
You got that's for murder.
That it maybe.
That must have been, I know, whenever professional jockeys riding, there is an expiry date. You're naturally thinking, what will I do next? When and how did you make the conscious decision to stay with Willie? Was it ever a temptation to train independently?
Not at the time, no, definitely not. Thought it was too expensive and too much of a huge upheaval to set up. And I'd spoken to Willie a couple of years before I retired, because it was always on your mind. Obviously, you need to be thinking forward about the future ahead and stuff. And he'd always kind of mentioned, like, there'll always be a place for you here, he had said. So that was about 5 or 6 years before I retired. And when I was thinking about it then that year, I spoke to him again, and he'd got to a huge kind of stage at that point, with a huge amount of horses, and he'd never had an assistant really before. So I spoke to him, and he said, why don't you come and be my assistant? And at the time, Max Dynamite was going to Australia for the Melbourne Cup. And he said, look, you've been here long enough, you know what way I like my horses trained and this and that. So he says, why don't we integrate it with that you're going to become my assistant and go and look after him for the 6 weeks that he was going to be out there. And so that was kind of basically it. And I said, yeah, that's great. And I told him the date I wanted to retire, which was Kerry National Day. So because I thought I had a good riding race at the time. But so I said, I'm going to retire Kerry National Day. He says, yeah, well, the horse is leaving a week later. So he said, suits perfect.
And Long Dog won the hurdle. I remember it well.
Yeah, well, obviously, I had a good ride in the Kerry National. I thought past the hat. He'd been second year before for Arthur Moore, and I was riding for Arthur at the time, but the ground went soft, so he didn't run. So I ended up on one of Willie's that had absolutely no chance in the ground. And then obviously Ruby and Willie and Rich and Susanna Ritchie obviously had Long Dog running a novice hurdle. I think it was a 1-5 shot. So they put me forward and said, listen, you can go out on him. It was after the Kerry National. I said, perfect. So, but I was never so nervous in my entire life going out a racehorse. Like, I think it was four runners, maybe 5 runners. And because it was the race after the National and there was no jump race after that, like the Wareham kind of emptied, and Barry will know, but I was with my valet was Danny Danaher. So it's kind of two sides of the way room, and on my side, and I was the only rider in that race from my side. So all the riders gone. So all of a sudden, 20 minutes before the race, I'm sitting there on my own, and all these thoughts started going through my head, thinking, obviously, these people have given me this opportunity to go out on a winner. And I was never worried about the horse's ability or his jumping, but I was thinking, if the stirrup breaks or the girth breaks or something, or if I just fall off going to the start or something gets loose, and like all these thoughts started going through my head, and I was never so nervous in my entire life going out in a racehorse. But as soon as I got up and then got to the start, yeah, it was fine. It was, but just too much time to think at that moment.
That sounds like a £7 claimer, Barry. That sounds like a guy going out in his first ride, not his last.
I know, because you were always a cool customer, David. I'd never have had you for overthinking on many occasions.
Sure it wasn't. It was just this was all set up, and I was thinking like the stupidest things, like the girth is going to break or stuff like that, that kind of way. Like I never thought he'd fall, or I never thought he'd get beat, but all of those just stupid things. But anyway, it worked out.
What I'm taking from that, Barry, is that Willie promised him a 6-week holiday in Australia if he would become his assistant trainer. And here we are. It worked out.
Happy days.
It sounds like he was earmarked for the job a while ago too. So it was another one that he was lucky it happened. But now I think Willie had eyes on him.
Before we get into specific horses, I want to mention the rapport you have with him. It seems like you can be very honest, and he can be very honest with you, and you can have a good debate or argument or whatever you want to call it, that you have a very honest relationship, the pair of you.
Yeah, again, it just comes back to from being there so long, so I know when to step back, and there's times I wouldn't open my mouth either, so but that's just the way it is. But yeah, like if Willie asks my opinion, I give it to him, because I know he wants an honest opinion, and he'll be honest with me or whatever. And sometimes he doesn't really like to hear what I have to say, and probably times I don't want to hear what he has to say. But listen, he's always the boss, and he's always right. But yeah, listen, we talk about most things, and if he asks my opinion, I give it to him, and what I think, and a lot of the time it's aligned anyway, so it is. But there's times I just have a different opinion and give him a different outlook and stuff.
The boss is always right, Barry. I will say, and I must reference it, he gave you great credit after Ethical Diamond won the Breeders' Cup Turf. Not many National Hunt race planners would have saw that opportunity. Before we get into the Mullins chat, a reminder that William Hill are a non-runner money back on all 28 races at the Cheltenham Festival, so you can bet safe in the knowledge that if your runner doesn't turn up in March, you will be getting your money back. At this stage, at the time of recording, David, how many horses do you think Closutton are going to travel to Cheltenham?
I think we had 79 last year, runners, and I'm going to say it's not going to be probably far off that. I'm going to say 60 maybe and upwards, that kind of way. So, depending on ballots and stuff like that, and obviously you probably lose one or two through injury and stuff like that on the way. But I'm going to say around that. We'll have plenty anyway,
Just the 79, Barry. Where do you want to start?
Well, we start at the top, maybe work our way down from the Gold Cup, Ryanair, and so.
Yeah, let's go with the king. How is Galopin Des Champs? The vibes seem to be very positive.
Yeah, he's really, really well, and obviously he had a mishap, and he missed the John Durkin at the start of the year, and there was a little bit of a rush to get him ready for Christmas, and he ran a stormer, I thought, behind Affordale Fury in third, and. Listen, I thought he was in great order going to the DRF, but I suppose just looking at it on the day, to me, he probably ran a fraction flat, and maybe Christmas took more out of him than we thought. But just the last 10 days, his work has absolutely been really top-notch again, back to where it was. It's the best I've seen him work all season. The horse himself seems in a really, really good place, and, I'm really happy with him going to the race. I think he can run a big race. It's possibly a more competitive race this year than it was last year, maybe, or the year before even, but... I think especially, I know Cheltenham can dry out really quick, but we've had a lot of rain, and if there's any little bit of juice in the ground, I can see him running a big race again.
Since the other potential runners, Gaelic Warrior and Facta File, are we any closer to a decision on those?
Well, I think, and I'm only guessing, but I think they'll be probably split up. And I suppose at the moment, the vibes I'm getting, and this is from not talking to anybody, but just listening to what's happening around, is that maybe Factor File will stay in the Ryanair because there's positive vibes coming out of it. I know the way you're thinking. And obviously they've got Spillane's Tower as well. I am Maximus as a possible for the Gold Cup. So the Martinstown camp have 3 runners possibly in the Gold Cup. So that's putting 2 and 2 together and maybe getting 4 or possibly 5. But that's the way I'm thinking at the moment. It's going to happen, and for that reason, I would say if he goes there, my guess is that Galopin or Gaelic Warrior will probably go to Gold Cup. I know Paul would like it a different way, but can't have it all our own way.
And just as regards that decision on Factor File, what would you think is behind that? Is like he obviously stayed 3 Mile 1 in the Brown Advisory. He got the trip well in Leopardstown. But is it his racing style over the potential extreme test that the Gold Cup is in a quality field like that? Is that the reason why they're potentially looking at coming back and trip?
I would think so, and he was so good last year as well. And I go back to the likes of Florida Pearl, who was a really, really good horse and won a Brown Advisory, but never just got that last furlong in a Gold Cup. He won 4 Irish Gold Cups, and obviously the Brown Advisory over 3 Mile 1, but he just found that extra furlong a bit of a struggle, and there's possibly that. I suppose there's the argument to say that you'll never know or never find out until you try, but I think just the fact that they have so many other options, and he was so good obviously last year in the Ryanair, and I think it suits his style. Going a real good gallop, he doesn't have to make it, but I think if there's something going a real good gallop, a good even gallop over that shorter trip, then it seems to suit his style of racing.
Well then, the Gaelic Warrior, how do you see Gaelic Warrior playing out for him in the Gold Cup?
I think he'll have to settle a good bit better than he did in the Irish Gold Cup and the DRF, and I think he can settle. He proved that last year in Aintree, when Patrick rode him and dropped him in a bit. I don't think he'll have to be as far back, and I think looking at this moment in time, the way the race would pan out with the likes of Haiti Calours and Galopin the Jukebox Man and a couple of others, I'd be hoping that there'd be a strong enough pace in the race that he'd be able to slot in and get a bit of cover, and hopefully he'd be able to switch off. I think with a bit more cover than he got in Leopardstown, I think he should be fine.
And from one championship race to another, there's 9 left in the champion hurdle as we speak. You currently have Lossiemouth, Poneros and Anzadam. And I suppose a very simple question, David, are any of that trio good enough to win a champion hurdle?
I think for Poneros, it might come a year too soon. And Anzadam is a bit of an enigma. He has his issues, and he's just not the easiest and stuff to ride. But he has loads of ability, and if he got a channel in the right direction, in a very open year, anything could happen. And then Lossiemouth, yes, I would say she has the ability. And last year, I didn't think she had. I didn't think she was good enough to beat Stateman, and our work at home would have said that. Stateman, we would have worked them together a couple of times, and he would have come up on top both times. And obviously, he had Constitution Hill in the mix. Argument to say you should have rolled the luck, and obviously, what happened last year in Golden Ace, who came out of the mares as to avoid Lossiemouth, ended up winning. So, she has that option, and then obviously the mares. You say it's an easier option, but arguably there's Wood who you maybe have only one to beat or try and beat. So everybody loves a winner at Cheltenham, So that's the balance, and that's the discussion Rich and Willie will have to have, and decide which way they want to go.
But what would be your advice to them?
I would say no doubt she's probably a better mare over 2.5. But I think this year, all the protagonists in the champion hurdle would be better over 2.5.
Agreed.
I think it's a toss of a coin at the moment.
I'd get the feeling you'd roll the dice if you had the choice, Dave, would you?
I'm coming around to that idea, yeah. I think this will probably be our last chance, so I'm coming around to that idea of it, yeah, that maybe you should, yeah. Okay,
well, if there ever is a year, it's 2026. Then to the champion chase, we had the unfortunate news during the week that Marine National won't take his place to defend his crown. And it now appears like a race that Majborough has to lose. We all know how talented he is. You probably send Il Était Temps as well. Is it a case of just jumping around?
Sure, I suppose it's never that simple. But I think if he puts up the performance he did in the DRF, he'll win, won't he? I mean, to my mind, he will anyway. If he's on an equal par with that, I don't see too much in the race to beat him. So he's got a good record around Cheltenham. Obviously, he's won a Triumph. He was very unlucky not to win an Arkle last year. So I don't think the course holds too much fear for him. So yeah, I think with a performance similar to the DRF, I think would be good enough.
And Il Était Temps will go?
At the moment, yeah, he does have the option still of the Ryanair, but I think at the moment, the champion is the favourite option with him. Yeah, he obviously has to step up on a real disappointing run in Ascot. He was very good the time before in Sandown when he beat John Bon, and a reproduction of that would put him in the mix, I think. But obviously it's a concern coming back from such a bad run.
Barry, I think we'll all be watching Majborough through our fingers, a little bit like when we were watching you on Moscow Flyer.
I think that could have been more me than Moscow. So hopefully Majborough puts in, as David says, a similar performance would make him hard to beat. But then just moving on to horse you mentioned to me last week, David, we were in company in the stairs hurdle, Ballyburn. Is that still sounding that's his likely route?
Yeah, he was taken out of the champion hurdle today, so that's his only option now. And he's a very good horse, and he's been, I don't know, people are knocking him a little bit, but he's a Cheltenham winner already. He won the Turners. On his chasing didn't work out for him, obviously, but he's still a Grade 1 winner over fences. And on his first run this year, he's behind Tihupu only a nose in the Hatton's Grace over 2.5. When it looked for all the world to me like that he was a fraction unlucky that he just didn't get there, and we thought he'd improve for the run. He was disappointing a little bit at Christmas over 3 miles. I think he just didn't show up on the day a little bit. He was fine and he missed a couple down the back, and I think the race told on him. So, I think we can get him back. He's working really well. And looking at the race, I think obviously Tihupu is probably the one to beat. Honesty Policy's not a bad horse, but I think he's got to step up. Bob Wallinger won it last year. He's not getting any younger. And then you've got the likes of maybe Mashan too. Cabrel de Matan, I'm not certain he'll stay. I think there's more issues about him staying than there would be about Ballyburn. So at a price, I think he was, I don't know, is he 16 or something to 1 or 20 to 1? I think he's just, for me, he's overpriced. I'm not saying he's going to win the race, but I could see him running a good race now. I think he's a bit forgotten, so I do.
Yeah, he's potentially following the path that Bob Ollinger went last year, having not worked out over fences from as a novice chaser. He could still very easily get to that level, couldn't he?
Definitely. And I suppose a little bit like Tihupu used to do. If we only ran in the Hatton's Grace and he didn't run the Christmas, he'd be favourite, I would say, So, as I say, I'm not going to say he's going to win the race because he does have a bit to find on Tihupu from Christmas. But, I do think he's probably a little bit overpriced and a little bit forgotten.
So many examples of the good staying hurdlers just not working out over fences. Of course, the most famous of them being Big Bucks. A couple that can jump are a couple of mares you've got. Dino Blue is in many an accumulator this year, but you've got backup. You've got Spindleberry and you possibly Jade de Grougy, a strong hand in the mares.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously, Dino Blue was very good in it last year, and I think she was second year before, so we know she handles the course. She was second in a Grand Annual as well, so she no issues there. She's followed a similar profile this year as she did last year, and she was a good winner last time out in Naas. Listen, it probably wasn't the most difficult race for her running against a couple of stayers, but I think it was on really heavy ground. I think better ground will suit her, and I think she goes there definitely with a favourites chance. She's in good order, yeah. Spindleberry coming back from a disappointing run in the Irish Gold Cup. Maybe coming back to this trip might suit her better and probably a little lower grade as well. And Jade de Grougy's been good so far over fences. I would imagine if Lossiemouth went to the champion, she would switch to the mare's hurdle. But she's done nothing wrong. She was second to the big Westerner in heavy ground over 3 miles, or 2.6 in Limerick at Christmas, and she's won well since at Thurles. So, I think I could see her being placed again. She was second to Lossiemouth in the mare's hurdle. So, I could see them all being in the mix, yeah. I think, as I said, it's a good strong hand we have.
A big team of novices, obviously, and there's a few decisions I'm sure to be made yet. But I suppose the one to kick off with Mighty Park, very impressive in his maiden hurdle, but it's a big reputation.
Yeah, we think he's a very good horse, and he's always shown the right things at home. Very professional in everything he's done since he came, for a horse that had only one run and a point to point. And I rode him work before Christmas and just came up. I hadn't ridden him before and expected, a point to pointer. I expected him to be a bit green and a bit sluggish and whatever, but he came up behind a fast horse and he came up pretty well with him. And I just got off Willie and I said, this has got loads of pace. This is a fair tool. And Willie said, yeah, he's been catching my eye. And Willie kind of thought he might be his champion bumper horse for this year. But, he jumps really well, and the team wanted to go jumping with him. And he missed his run at Christmas, which wasn't ideal, but he ran a couple of weeks after and he put up a huge performance. Again, probably not a strong race, but to do what he did, Mark had ridden him at home and got a great feel off him and said he's loads of pace. But when he got off him in Fairyhouse, Mark said, I've no idea. He says, it felt like I was doing a hack canter at all stages. And when I turned around there they're a mile behind me. He says, so he just gave him an awesome feel that day, and he's done nothing to dispel that in the future. So one we're really looking forward to next week. Yeah.
And just with it being such an uncompetitive maiden that he won, would you have any fear, that he would be streetwise enough for a Grade 1 novice like this with only one start on his belt?
Yeah, I suppose it's always a concern. But as I said, like, just everything he does at home, he doesn't ride green. He rides professionally. He knows how to quicken. He knows how to jump. He doesn't duck from anything. He's not stary or anything when he walking down the lane or anything like that. He just gets on about his business. So so I'm pretty happy enough that way that he'll be good enough.
And I presume they're all in the melting pot of where they go. He's short in the Supreme. He's, I think, nearly favourite for the Turners. JP and Frank and all. There's so many opinions with that horse. But where in your head would you like to run him?
To me, it doesn't matter. I think he has the pace for the Supreme, and I think he has the stamina for the Turners. I spoke to Mark last week when he got off him, and I just asked him what are his thoughts, and he kind of said similar. He says, he says I think he's good enough to go to the Supreme. So I think whatever they decide to go, I think he's a player. Yeah, I think he'll be in the mix. The one horse I would imagine will definitely run is probably Leader Dalier. His owners, Michael Burke, has St. Bacco in the Turners, and I would imagine they'll be split up, and I would think St. Bacco is definitely more of a 2.5 mile horse. So I think Leader Dahlia will definitely run, and he's one. We were really disappointed when the Christmas, couldn't believe he ran so bad. Now, when I say ran so bad, he was second to a really, really impressive horse in Ballyfad, who's just got touched off in a Grade 1 since, so maybe it wasn't that bad a run, but we expect him to run better, and he did win really impressively in Punchestown since, and I think he's improved again. And, we think he's a real good horse too, and he'll definitely, as I say, run the Supreme.
And will they be joined by Sober? Because there's a person on the podcast is invested in Sober, and we just need to make sure that he's still got a live bet.
I would prefer Sober in the Turners myself.
Was it in the Turners, Barry?
Yeah, that's Turners.
Oh,
Jen, yeah.
my apologies. Well, are we going to have 2 or 3 in the Supreme, and then we'll move on to the Turners?
He's in the mix still for the Supreme, but he's obviously in the Turner, so he's one that hasn't been decided yet. But he's a 2 mile 6 winner on the flat, and his flat form in France was overstaying trips. So I think the Turner strip might suit him a little bit better.
And is he a horse you'd like for the Turners, David?
Yes, definitely. I think he would travel away sweet. He's jumping always. He seems to miss the first a little bit, but I think it's an easier start jumping wise in the Turners. There's kind of 2 hurdles up the hill rather than first downhill in the Supreme, and I think his class would make him travel a lot sweeter all the way. In the Turners, I think he would have the pace to be on their tails and not be off the bridle turning in, and I think he would have the stamina to come back up the hill then again.
His jumping seemed to improve a good bit from Killarney to the Moscow Flyers. You'd be hopeful for more improvement again?
I would think so, yeah. He's been schooling most days at home, and Paul schooled him the other morning and was very happy, and he let him rattle up over. Now he came up with some quick horses just to get it right, and he was pretty good with what he did.
Barry's a happy man.
You're happy, Barry, yeah.
Will he be joined by King Rasco Grey there?
There's a chance. Again, the Turleys have Free Spirit in the race, who would look at 2.5 miler. He was very good. He ran really well at the DRF, behind Talk to Talk and Ballyfad over 2 miles. He was placed in a 2 mile 3 bumper before. He wouldn't have any issue stepping up to 2.5. We'll see what Paul thinks. He might want to split a couple of them up and go in different directions, but he's in the mix for both. I could see him run. I think there's huge improvement still from the DRF. I think Willie quoted that he looked like a mare and foal walking around the parade ring, but sure, that's probably a little bit unkind to him, but I do think there's improvement. It was only the 3rd or 4th run of his life. Obviously he's had a couple of niggly problems, but I think he can improve, and whichever race he goes for, then looking at the form of the DRF race, I think he has to be competitive, Okay.
Well, we've got there's so many. We won't hit on all of them, but give us a word on Dr. Steinberg. Obviously, a hugely impressive winner at the DRF. Espresso Milan. Sortudo's fancied by a few for the stage.
Yeah, Sortudo ran a big race, obviously in Nace behind All Start that. I think Patrick got a little bit, maybe trying to follow Paul and Jack, and they fell away a bit across the bottom. I'll start that. Who's a very good horse, got away a bit on him, but he's still running a huge race. I could imagine he might go Turners, stick to 2.5 at the moment, but he's a very decent horse with 7 in the bumper last year. I think the favourite for the race, No Drama Descent, was he 6th or 8th or something like that, so not far behind him. I think he's a horse that improved all through last year. He worked very well yesterday. I think he can improve again, and he'll probably there. I would imagine Dr. Steinberg will go 3 miles. He was very good at Leopardstown. People say it wasn't a strong grade 1, and he was a bit keen. But listen, Paul bounced out and made the run and rode him forcefully, and I don't think he'd have to ride him that forcefully in an Albert Bartlett. 3 miles. I imagine he could take his time a little bit and hunt around, and I think I'd have no issue then with him relaxing. He's a horse I think will improve for better ground. We never thought he was one that would handle real heavy ground. He's not big and robust like some of those other horses, so he will go there. Espresso Milan, I think, will go to the Albert Bartlett as well. He was a good winner in Thurles. He's improved. Won his maiden hurdle in Punchestown, stepped up and trip and won well there. And again, I can see more improvement. And we run a funny one in the race in the Albert Bartlett, a horse called maybe Hip Hop de la War, who's a good class flat horse. He beat Tony Martin's horse Sandabad, who's I think a 131 rated horse. He beat him 11 lengths in a maiden hurdle in Galway. He can be a little bit tricky, and he's a little bit of a mind of his own, but he's one I could just see hunting around, and I wouldn't be shocked if he ran a good race in the Albert Bartlett either.
Barry, any other business with the novices?
No, I think we've done fairly well covered. He's on fire. Patrick won on in Carlisle.
Yeah, I don't think he'll go. Would you believe he actually got a cut in Carlisle, and he missed a week or 2 after that. So he's back right now. He's back cantering away, but I would see him maybe going to Fairyhouse, maybe Orange or something like that. But a horse we didn't know a lot about. He came from France after running in maybe November time, and was very light when he arrived. So we just had to give him a bit of time off and let him fill out again. And yeah, but a nice horse. Whatever he does, the usual thing. Whatever he does over hurdles will be a bonus. He's a big horse. I imagine Chase will be the making of him.
Another novice we're looking forward to seeing, David, is Bambino Fever. Obviously, she beat Old School Outlaw at Naas, and she got on to win well at Fairyhouse since.
She improved hugely for the run. She won very well in Fairyhouse. I think she's improved again looking at her work. I think looking at the 2 mares, they probably look a little bit of class above the rest of them. Obviously, Old School Outlaw has gone and was very impressive again after in the Sol Arena. So she's a formidable opponent. But obviously, Bambino won the bumper there last year. We know she likes the track, and she improved all through the season last year. I think she's improving again. So it'll be an interesting contest. But obviously, we love our filly,
Yeah, good.
In the mares we trust. Really we've got Dino Blue, and then we've got Bambino Fever. By the end of this section, we're going to have an accumulation. One novice we won't be seeing before we move on, David, is the Reverend. Just question, is he okay? Is he likely to be seen this season again?
Yes, I would think he will. It looks just might have got a knock and maybe had a bit of infection. So he's just had a little bit like Barry says. He's going to have to get some medication that will rule him out of the race next week and that. But I would hope that within the next 10 days he'll be fine, so.
Good to hear. Okay, so I kind of get this. To summarise the novices, is it fair to say Mighty Park is the best?
Yeah, he's definitely up there. Yeah, he's doing the right stuff anyway. Yeah, so.
Okay, but who's the horse that you think is going to outrun his odds?
Outrun his odds. I think Leader Dahlia is a big price in the Supreme, and I think Sober's a big price in the Turners.
We're going to rename the podcast the Sober Podcast if we get this horse home.
Isn't that what we're all going to be next week anyway?
Exactly, David. Exactly. And Barry did say that you're prone to a good night out and be completely sober the whole way through.
No, of course, exactly. Yeah.
We'll kick on to the next section, but before we do, I want to make sure that everybody who's watching or who's listening has downloaded the William Hill app. And if you haven't, it's really easy. Just head over to the App Store now and we will kick on with the next part of the Willie Mullins segment, which is the Juveniles. Obviously, tragically, no Narciso Haas. We're very disappointed about that. Is he okay, and when will we see him again?
Yeah, he's okay again, and hopefully we might get him back for Punchestown. I don't think he'll go to Aintree. I would imagine he'll stay at home and hopefully go to Punchestown. It was, again, disappointing to us all, but it was actually got struck into from behind in the race, I think it was. And, it's going to be fine, but he just missed a bit of time and it was going to be a rush to get him here. So we didn't think it was worth taking the chance on rushing him, and you prefer to have a horse obviously going in 100% condition, and so that was the decision was made. And listen, throw enough shite at the wall and hope some of it sticks. Now we've got plenty of others following up in behind them. So
That was the motto last year, I take it.
yes, that was the motto. It's kind of the motto every year, but yeah, we have a lot of juveniles this year, and a lot of them had a run in France, so they haven't run so far this year. They had good runs with horses like Galopin Des Champs, who was second to Proactive, horse called 40-50, who was fourth to Match a Man, who we also have in the race and have run so far. So yeah, we've got plenty that we like in the race, and obviously I think plenty that will go on to be better horses in the future as well.
We mentioned a few specific ones in Proactive, Selma Devari, Macho Man, but I'm very conscious that if we were naming horses this time last year, I wouldn't have named Poneros. Just talk us through your team, what way you're thinking, and wouldn't you just love to win the race with a horse that we haven't seen run for Willie Mullins, given the new rule that they brought in there last year?
I'll say nothing about that now. Yeah, we've plenty in it. Proactive and Macho Man were first and second in a winner's race in Fairy House. Both came with good reputations. Probably weren't showing us that they were going to be stars when they started working, but they improved with every bit they did. And I'd say just the last week before they ran, Proactive definitely started to turn the corner and started to show us that he could be a bit of a racehorse. And he won very well. First time out, he beat Match a Man a length, or a couple of lengths. There wasn't much between him. And it was kind of that way home. It was tit for tat, which was the best at home. And I think both have improved since. They both got more streetwise, I think, looking at their work. So they're in the mix. Obviously, Selma Devari was very good behind Narciso Has for her first run. She had a good bit of experience coming from France. We think she can improve plenty for her run in Leopardstown. So she's in there. And trying to think what else. We've got a couple more. I say Apollon de Charmy was second to Proactive. He's a horse I like. I think can run really well. Montcruce was a horse that probably unlucky not to win. And, he made a bad mistake at the second last in Nace. I think he might have won on the day. He's a huge, big 4-year-old. And I think there's huge improvement to come from him. I think he's a really horse for the future. Going to be a real good chaser in time. And, I think he's definitely a good one. Naomi Delavie was second on her only run. Probably a little bit weak at the time, but she looks strengthened up. She looks really strong at the moment. And I'm probably missing a couple. Manel Academy, won an academy hurdle for John Nallen. I think it's a real nice horse. His pedigree speaks speed. He works a little bit like that. So, but I think, he works well. I think he's a fair horse. I've probably left out one or two, but
if you were to pick one, who would you go for? And if you were to pick an outsider for an each-way play,
pick one. I'd probably, looking at the way he's improved, maybe Proactive. I think he's got much sharper than he is. And one of the outsiders, I'm going to say maybe Montcruce. The big grey horse. I thought, I think if he'd have won in Nace, he'd probably been quarter the price that he was. I know Willie spoke about him the other day, and I think he's probably shortened a little bit. But I think definitely, even if he doesn't win next Friday, he'd be one I'd be backing now, having something each way on maybe for next year's Supreme.
Good to know. Okay, well, that's the juveniles. We'll pick up the pace and we'll head on into the novice chasers. Kopek Des Bordes is gone favourite for the Arkle. The money has come. The schooling has been good. The talk of the country about these gallops. God, we love when people just start talking about gallops. He's going to be there with Caragazy. Is he as good as people say?
Yeah, ability-wise, he is definitely. I don't know. The gallops are fine. He jumped well. He was against some good experienced horses, but you can't replicate a race. So, listen, he was good at what he did, but you can't replicate a race. So it is a concern that he's going there, lacking that little bit of experience. But as I say, ability-wise, I do think he's definitely up there and has all the ability in the world. Looking at Lulamba, to my point of view, looking at him the last day, he just jumped a fraction big and fraction high early. And listen, they won it with a stayer last year in Django Bay with 3-miler. There will probably be a lot of pace. Obviously, Cargeese, Irish Panther, a couple more. So if he can keep touch with him, obviously, I imagine he will be staying on. But just the fact that he jumped a little bit big and he did race a little bit on and off the bridle. I know he was in against older horses, but that would be a slight concern for me. I think a little bit the same with Romeo Coolio. They're probably more 2.5 mile horses. The rule used to be that you needed a 2.5 mile horse to win it, but I think Kopek can travel. And as I say, if he's jumping, can keep him in touch. If it stands up, which I've no reason at the moment to believe it won't, then, he's a course winner last year after winning the Supreme. I think he's a real star. His work has been really, really good the last couple of days. So really happy with where he's at the moment.
You say you can't replicate a race, David, but I believe he was in good company with his 2 schools in Punchestown and Ferryhouse.
Yeah, he went with some experienced horses, a couple of novices and a couple of older horses as well, so they would have all been kind of ratings of around 150 or whatever like that. So so they wouldn't have been donkeys either, so and they would have gone a good gallop. Obviously, didn't just hack around either. But as I say, it probably wasn't racing pace and it wasn't driving down over the last couple either. But especially the last day, he was gassy the first day. But the last day in Ferryhouse, when Paul went on going to the second last, and he was able to go to let him fly and down to the last and good gallop and made it a little bit long and sent him, and the horse was good and quick. So he was very happy, and if Paul is happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, he looked good.
It's funny, it's amazing that you can just have a few 150 horses just gallop with him. And I know you say that flippantly, but you must realize like that there's so few trainers. Maybe Nicky Henderson is the only other one who could do that. I think the matchup with him and Lulamba is one of the races of the week, and we really looking forward to seeing him back. The Brown Advisory, the slower stairs. We say Gold Cup horses, but I don't know if there's a Gold Cup horse in this year's renewal. You've got Final Demand, you've got Kay Doughty, you've got Kitspool, you potentially got more. What are you thinking?
Yeah, obviously, take the DRF out of it, and everyone's talking about Final Demand. He was disappointing there. Kay Doughty beat him well. We always thought Kay Doughty had a lot of ability, and we ran him last year, I think, in the Turners or something like that, and he ran disappointing. We put cheek pieces on him in Punchestown after, in an ordinary novice hurling, he went and won. And this year it looked like he's 17-3, he's a huge big horse. Fences were always going to be the making of him. He ran very well first time out when he was second to Kitsbull in a beginners in Punchestown. Then he went and won good and easy in Ferryhouse New Year's Day, I think it was, wasn't it? And, was prone to the odd mistake. But he's like, I used to ride him a good bit last year. And he's a horse that had a run in France. He was 5th to Majborough in his novice hurdle in France. But to ride him last year, like, you would think this horse had been broken 2 weeks previous. He was gormless. He was all over the shop. He would look everywhere. And we always felt that once we put the cheek pieces on him, he would be much better. And he was a little bit that way. We saved him for the Grade 1 and we put him on as Leopardstown, and they seemed to make a man of him again. He was concentrating much more and he put up a huge performance. On the day, I don't think Final Demand ran his race. And I don't mind him necessarily being beaten by Kay Doughty, who we think is a very good horse. It was more the fact that, to me, he didn't jump as well as we know he can. He was very, very good in his beginner's chase. He jumped brilliant again in Limerick. Probably wasn't as impressive winning the race, but I think his jumping held up well, whereas in Leopardstown, I don't think it did. Paul said he was putting down, and it's something he's never done before. Patrick, who was following him, was behind him, actually said, he was wrapping the middle board, like he wasn't getting any takeoff, and so that was the more disappointing part, even the fact that he got beat. So he was a bit down the dumps when he came back for a couple of days, but we freshened him up. He's been working well. We schooled him a couple of times the other day, and Paul rode him the other morning, and he jumped really, really well. So you'd forgive any horse one bad run. So I don't think it's in what is now probably a very open race. I do definitely think he's still in the mix, and even going back to his run last year, obviously third to the New Line, who's now favourite for the champion hurdle, so over 3 miles, maybe that or even run would suffice, Kitsbull was very good at Kempton, wasn't he? He was awesome at Kempton. Only got as far as that he jumped 3-4 in Sandown and made a mistake and unseated Paul, so I don't think you can rule him out. And we'll have a couple more: Joystick, Argento Boy, Predators Gold. Probably more at the moment you would look like place chances, but good quality horses in their own right.
And just on Kay Doughty, obviously very soft ground the last couple of runs. He looked at home on that in Leopardstown. Do you think those similar conditions will be essential to him? And just on Catesbull as well. I thought he jumped a fraction to his right, and to his right when Paul got the fall off him in Sandown. Would you see that as being a concern?
Yeah, a little bit, but he hasn't jumped right at home. So, I speak to Paul about it, but it was only, I think he jumped the first couple straight, and then the one he obviously fell at, he definitely went a little bit right. So, we'll see. Sure, that's whoever's riding him will be able to organise that, I'm sure. But
David Cates,
yeah,
many more. He used to have to ride them.
Exactly, yeah. And KD, I think he'll handle better ground. Obviously, fast ground wouldn't be ideal for him, but slower ground, I think, for them all in the race, actually. And that's not even our own horses, I'd say. Most of them, bar Western Fold, I think slower ground would suit him, So, but it's the second day. We've had a lot of rain. I know it can dry out very quickly. But at the same time, there has to be the amount of rain England and Ireland has had. There has to be a lot of moisture still in the ground. So I think whatever ground it is on the day will be fine. I don't see it being overly quick.
Okay, well, with that, I have to ask if he's right. Does Final Demand carry the rest of yours?
I'm not going to say he carried him, but I do think he probably sets the standard. Yes.
Okay, fair answer. The bumper, Willie Mullins' record in the bumper is exemplary, as we all know. But this time around, we don't have as much, I suppose, form to go on because you were maybe a little bit later starting. I have a statistic for the Willie Mullins bumper horses. He's won it 14 times, including 5 of the last 6 years. But the DRF bumper is usually a good pointer. 8 of the last 10 winners of this race have won a graded or listed bumper before Cheltenham. Yours haven't actually had a chance to contest them because they were a little bit later starting. So give us what you got.
I think I have slight concern for bumpers in general in Ireland, and there's definitely less of them now. And I think they're a little bit on the wane. I think they're a little bit uncompetitive, most of them, especially the maiden bumpers, obviously. And so for that reason, I don't know how strong most of them are. And obviously, Love Sign, they knew it was 2-2 and it was soft ground in 8, but he won 26 lengths or something like that, So I think no matter how good the race was or how weak the race was, for any horse to do that, to put in that sort of a performance, I think has to rank him high. He wouldn't show it at home that he was going to put in that performance before he ran, and probably hasn't since. And but I think that just the performance he put in on the day was very good. The Irish Avatar is probably the only one that has actually a bit of form that's been franked, because Gordon's horse was taking him when he won in Naas last week, and he was very impressive when he won in Navan, and he showed good form that day. So I think he's in the mix. The 2 4-year-olds, Quiryn and Our Trigger. Again, 4-year-olds don't have a good record in the race. Probably not loads have tried. There's only ever been 3 winners. I think the last winner was Q Card. I think maybe the last one to try it was in the mix. Barry Europe, Blue Sari, wasn't he? He was second as a 4-year-old.
Yeah, he was just only beaten second in Vialan, actually.
In Vialan, wasn't it? So it can be done. But I think these guys, probably a little bit like Blue Sari, who came from France, are not coming as 3-year-olds bought in the store sale and broken and riding only last year and coming in. These were broken as 2-year-olds. And Quiryn was a flat horse that wouldn't go into stalls. And so they were trained as 2-year-olds. So I think that gives them a little bit of edge over maybe more over other 4-year-olds of other years, So they get a good weight advantage. I think they get £10, And Quiryn, he's a half brother to, I think, a couple of Grade 1 winners, to a Prix de Cadron winner and a Prix Royal Oak winner. And he has that bit of pace and a bit of stamina. And getting the £10, I think I wouldn't be surprised now if I could see him run a good race.
So that's the one David Casey's riding.
I would take a chance 10-11, and getting the £10. I think it's because he's not built like a small little 4-year-old. He's a big, strong horse as well, and as I say, he has that blend of speed and stamina. So
I'm not surprised you told me he's a brother to Group 1 winner, because he's by one of the worst stallions, I'd say, that stood in Sutsas. Any handicappers for me? You've got Jump Allen, Mercia, Stormheart. Where do you want to start? I know you don't win any of the handicap chases now, but sure, look, we might try anyway.
Yeah, Mercia would go for the county. I would say ground is important to her. I think if it is slow ground, I think that would negate her chance big time. She struggled there last year in the Fred Winter, but then she went and won a Grade 1 in Aintree on much nicer ground. Her form this year has been pretty good. She was third in a graded race at the start of the year, 4-year-old only, when we thought she's probably a fraction disappointing. As it turned out, Talk to Talk won the race, so maybe it wasn't that bad at all. And then she ran a huge race at Leopards on the last day in definitely ground she would have hated. Paul went around the outside looking for better ground and she ran big, but I do think ground is very important to her. So she'll go for the county. Carbo was second to Glenn Killen in Naas, his first run back. He was meant to go chasing, but he got a knock at the start of the season, so his chase career was put on hold. It was just too late to start him back by the time he was ready to run, so he'll probably go down the county hurdle route. He good place for him last year in some good races and some graded races, so if he can bring back to the table, I think that gives him a good chance. I think the race will be run to suit him. Mark of 150 is probably high enough for him and will give him plenty of weight, so he'll be there. Bunting, I think, can run well in the Coral Cup. He ran the race last year, but just ran a bit keen, and he's had a couple of good runs this year. He went back on the flat, was third in the English Zara, which I think it was. Ran well at Christmas when he was fourth. Disappointing a little bit the last day in Leopards under the DRF, but I think he's in good form. I think he can step up. And what's the other horse you mentioned?
Stormheart was one in the red.
Stormheart, yeah, I think he'd go for the Coral. He won the Red Mills, but definitely a step up and trip will suit him better. And the horse won the Up the Yard Challenge.
Jump Allen,
yeah. A nice horse won at Sandown, a handicap hurdle last year. So again, another one was meant to go chasing, but had a little niggle at the start of the season and missed his turn to go chasing. So, he's in the mix. I think he's a little bit further down the weight, so we'll see where he gets in, but he might be one that might get into the Martin Pipe. But wherever he runs, yeah, I could see him running a nice race. Yeah, he's not the worst horse in the world, and again, one to look forward over fences next year.
Any other business, Barry? Any other questions you'd like to ask for the handicappers?
No, that's an impressive squad all through.
It's impressive that you can just say it off the top of your head, David, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. You
just get used to it.
I suppose the one question we'd ask, have you got one dark one for the week?
Dark one. Actually, I don't know, are they dark anymore, but obviously Sober, I think, was a good price. I gave him a good chance in the Turners. Moncruce, I thought, was a big one, but I think after Willie had his peak, I think he's quartered in price or something like that, So, so I don't know, are they dark, but I think they're horses at prices that have chances. I think Galopin at the price as well. I think 8 or 9 to 1 or whatever he is. I think to be in the 3, I think he's a great each way price.
So are we saying the bankers are, not the bankers, probably the wrong word, but like the solid ones are the Dino Blues, the Bambino Fevers, and the Galopin.
Your Majboroughs and your Factor Files, maybe,
Yeah. Fair enough. Mille is the brother to Quiryn, if anybody
That's
cares.
right, yeah.
Very, very good mare in France. David, thank you so much for your time. We know you have so much on your plate this week. We hope to see you across the water. You had 10 winners last year. Sure, what's another 10?
We settle for one, Jane, if we get one on the board to help, and we'll worry about the rest after that.
He says that now. Thank you very much, David. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, Jen. Thanks, Barry. Thanks very much. Cheers.
At this juncture, it's time to call on the professionals. So we're going to bring in Sam Norris from William Hill, who's going to give us proper, accurate prices. He's going to give us a bit of value if we put enough pressure on him. And he's going to give us, I suppose, David Casey has given us some insight into Closutton, and hopefully we'll get some prices on his horses. Sam, how are you at this time of year?
I'm very good, yeah. Looking forward for it all getting underway now, really. The build-up is long and intense, isn't it? I just want to see the tapes go up in the Supreme now, but yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, you've got a lot of contemporaries. We're nearly over the build-up, but we still have a few days to go. There were a number of horses there outlined by David Casey, some who were on our list, some less obvious horses. Can you tell us what prices are you offering about some of those Closutton candidates?
He's always an incredibly engaging man to listen to at this time of year, isn't he, David Casey? We'll go through kind of the more famous, the more illustrious names first, perhaps, and then touch on some of those darker ones. Kopek Des Bordes has been really strong over the last few days. I mean, it was 9-4 just last week, into 6-4 now. Obviously, the preparation hasn't been ideal, but this is Willie Mullins. We know he can get them to the track hard fit. So his strength in the market the last few days has been really notable. The fact that Lossiemouth was maybe mooted for a tilt at the Champion Hurdle is something racing fans have wanted to see for a long time. She's 11-4 in what looks as though it's going to be, the most open year for that race. Certainly far more open than it has been for the last few years. Even if you think she's a 2.5 miler, she's probably got a 2.5 miler to beat in that race in the New Lion. So it'd be really interesting to see if she goes there. Good to hear that we've potentially got a bit more of an idea as to Mighty Park's intended target. I know Willie will keep options open until the last minute, but look, he looked electric over 2 miles last time around. We make him 4-1 for the Supreme. I think that'd be the right race for him. He'd make that race an exceptionally good contest. He is 3-1 favourite at the moment for the Turners, but there are stacks of horses in the betting for that race, and obviously we're not running money back on it. Loads of horses in the Turners who might go Supreme, who might go Albert Bartlett. That might bring Sober into the equation. Looks as though this is his target. He's available at kind of 14-1 for that race at the moment. Don't think that will stand up if a number of those names drop off that we're kind of expecting to see. Galopin Des Champs is a big loser in the Gold Cup book for us. He's been really popular all through the course of the season. At 13-2 now, he's a bigger price than he has been for most of the season. So, yeah, fascinating to see how that develops. And just two that he touched on that are maybe a little bit darker. Leader Dallier is fascinating in the Supreme. He's 14-1 at the moment. He's not going to be 14-1 if he goes to that race and Paul Townend gets jocked up, which I assume that it's going to be Paul Townend's ride now if Mark Walsh rides Mighty Park. So our traders flagged this to me a couple of weeks ago, Leader Dallier. He will shorten if Paul Townend gets the leg up. And Quiryn is 10-1 for the bumper. Now, I had the pleasure of going over to Ireland last week and was trying to get some information about these Irish horses for the bumper. Obviously, Love Sign Dunner, who's probably posted the best effort we've seen so far. But I did hear the name Quiryn mumbled a couple of times. So interesting that David Casey's flagged that one up as well at 10-1. He's, Willie Mullins is the most interesting trainer of them all at the festival, given his vast array of ammunition. And I'm going to scurry off after this as well. Give the traders all the info. Let them do what they're going to do with these Willie Mullins nuggets. And maybe some of these horses will be a part of our incredible offering next week. We've got the 2 epic boosts every single day of the week. I'm sure there'll be some enhancements on some of the Willie Mullins runners as well. And we've got that kind of massive boost to kick us off. But I think the boys in trading will be interested to watch this episode for sure.
I'd say they will. They always just collapse whatever Barry Geraghty's tipped. But unfortunately, Barry, the old sequence came to a crash and burn last week of Found a 50 just going too fast. But I wanted to reference Sober because I think you said he was around 14-1 at the moment, Sam. What price do you think he'll be once this airs and everybody realises that Barry's tipped him and David Casey's positive on him?
Single figures, probably. Because as I say, there's loads of these that just aren't going to run in the race, I don't think. So yeah, that coupled with the wisdom of Messrs Geraghty and Casey. Take the I say he's 14s, he's 16-1. Take the 16s now.
With a name like that, all of the Irish will be on him, Barry.
Maybe so, yeah. Just a couple of others. Factophile David leads us to believe that he could be going for the Ryanair. So have you a price on him and a price on an update on Ballyburn?
Yeah, Factophile, I mean, the vibes have been kind of strong over the last week or so that he is heading in the direction of the Ryanair to try and retain his crown. As a result, we're 4-7 from 4-5 that he lines up in that race. As a Factophile backer, I kind of want Gaelic Warrior to run as well because I think he'd beat him. So I want Gaelic Warrior to stay in there and kind of keep the price up. But yeah, 4-7 from 4-5 for Factophile, given the vibes that we've heard. And they're only strengthening from your conversation today. And as for Ballyburn, who's very much come into the Stayers Hurdle equation in the last few days, he's 10-1. He is shortening up. It threatens to be probably the most competitive championship race of the week, though, the Stayers Hurdle. I know we've got a 9-4 fav at the moment, but there are 6-7 candidates on that list who I think would have a great chance. So, yeah, Ballyburn has been popular as well.
I don't know, Sam. I'd say the Gold Cup is a fairly deep Gold Cup.
Yeah, true. And that's actually 4-1 the field. So that, as a betting prospect, looks more wide open. But if we lost Factophile and Gaelic Warrior from the race, as it looks like we might do, then it might take a little bit of the shine off.
Let's kick on into our naps. Barry, you've got a nap and an each way prospect for the week ahead. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm a massive Kopek Des Bordes fan. Obviously goes there with only one run over fences. Chief is a horse that I came up against who did it, and he beat Kicking King. I think Lulamba could fall into the Kicking King style bracket of needing further in time, where I think Kopek Des Bordes is just so much pace. I'm a big fan of his, and the fact that he's done these, schooling sessions at pace, I think that's going to cancel out the lack of experience. And my each way play would be Sober in the Turners. Obviously good flat form, winner of the Queen Alexandra in Royal Ascot over 2 mile 6. Good stayer. Improved a lot from Killarney to Punchestown, where they didn't really fancy him on soft ground, but coped with that really well. So I think can build on that again. I think it's a solid each way shout in the Turners.
Yeah, Kopek Des Bordes, as we say, has been shortened up considerably over the last week or so. 9-4 into 6-4 for Kopek Des Bordes. So yeah, that one's really tightened up. And Sober Glory, as we say, 16-1 shot, but that could easily get short. Am I right in thinking, by the way, Barry, that you like Sober Glory in the Supreme and Sober in the Turners?
I do. Sorry, yeah. Did I?
Sober double, surely.
Yeah.
Surely not.
It's a sober week, won't it?
And I've just mixed them up there again. So Sober 16-1 for the Turners. Sober Glory in the Supreme, but yeah, it'd just be an interesting double for next week. That
we're here for whatever sequences there are. Once a winner's a winner's a winner, we don't mind. Okay, that's Barry's double. He's a nap and he's each way angle. Mine's a little bit more. I suppose I have to be complicated, don't I? I want the favourite in the Ryanair, Sam. You tell me which one that's going to be. That's my nap. And I'm going to go Hello Neighbour each way in the county. We spoke to Gavin Cromwell on the podcast, or not on the podcast. We spoke to Gavin Cromwell at some stage. Anyway, he was very sweet on Hello Neighbour, a grade 1 winner dropping back into handicaps. So he's my each way shout in the county.
Yeah, as you say, the Ryanair, I think, Factor File has an extremely good chance of winning that. He's 4-7 from 4-5, non-runner money back. If he was to go elsewhere and Gaelic Warrior was to stand up on his own, he'd be a short price favourite for the race at even money. Either one of them, as you kind of allude to, is going to go off favourite and is going to be very hard to beat in the Ryanair. Before I come on to Hello Neighbour, Jane, who do you like if they both run in the race, if Factor File and Gaelic Warrior renew rivalries? At
Cheltenham, I would like Factor File. I know what happened in the John Durkin, but different race.
It is. And Hello Neighbour is one that punters have kind of cottoned onto a little bit over the last few days. I think he was 20-1 plus last week. He's into 14-1 now for the William Hill County Hurdle. He's obviously got form that ties in with Mercier, who's been the talking horse for the race, 6-1 favourite now. And we forget, last year Hello Neighbour was very strong on the day for the Triumph in a race that had been billed for weeks as a straight shootout between East India Dock and Lulamba. Hello Neighbour went off 7-2 that day. Lulamba was 11-4. It wasn't that far behind him in the betting. Obviously got beat. He then got beat at Punchestown as well. Looks as though the handicaps have been his route through the course of this year. He finished in front of Mercier last season, was beaten by that horse in a handicap last time around, but plenty of punters have kind of decided that he's too big of a price in relation. So 14-1 at the moment, Hello Neighbour, but there were some early birds on at kind of 20s, 22s, 25s last week. So you're kind of setting the crowd off there, Jane.
I know, it sounds like I'm not the early bird, I'm second to the news, really. But
unless it's your money, unless it's your money short on the prices, I don't know.
If Gavin Cromwell manages to knock in a winner early in the week, that horse will crumble in the market, I can tell. Well, that's a wrap for today. We've covered a lot of ground. Don't forget, if anybody's listening or watching likes the sound of our selections for Cheltenham, you can put them in and combine them in your racing bet builder for Cheltenham. William Hill have the best builder out there, and you can check out that on the app or indeed online on their website each day and get building your bets. So I think that's it. I think we've covered enough. The next time you will rejoin us, we will be in Prestbury Park. If you do like the podcast, if you like to listen or watch, please subscribe to our channel. I know some of you have been leaving comments underneath the YouTube video saying that I look like a ghost, so I hope I look a little bit more colourful today. I did try and work on that. Please subscribe to our podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you, I suppose, get a bit of value out of Cheltenham next week. We will be hopefully with you across the week, Barry. This is Christmas. It's exciting.
It is. I can't wait, Jen.
You can find us on Instagram, on X, and on Facebook. And for all of the best prices, please do go over to the William Hill app or indeed on the website. And of course, as always, please gamble responsibly. 18 plus. We shall see you next week.